How easy is it to find a great white shark? Find out on this episode.
We get some rum and beer, expensive, put in a reindeer, so you know we're gonna party.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Marine Conservation Happy Hour podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Craken McCrack, and I'm joined today by Dan Beecham and Candace Field, who are both involved with upcoming shark documentaries for National Geographic's SHARKFEST. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having us.
How are you?
So, first of all, Dan, if I can start with you. So, you're the cinematographer for Sharks Up Close with fellow Brits Bernie, and you basically go and try to find a great white shark off the coast of South Africa, which is, I guess, kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack of needles. So, how difficult was that particular project?
Well, I don't want to give too many spoilers away because people might not have seen the show, but it was a tricky one. Yeah, as shoots go, it was tricky. Me and Bertie have done some tricky stuff together in the past, and this was probably the trickiest. But we did have some amazing underwater encounters still.
I really did like the fact that despite the focus being great white sharks, you do see a lot of other species in the episode, going from the sort of smaller dogfish, cat shark type species. Well, I guess I shouldn't give it away too much, but up to great white sharks. And it's a really nice message as well in terms of, well, there's a lot of talk about conservation. There's a lot of talk about the crazy panic there is about sharks and how communities have got together to basically try to make sharks less of a scary creature in the oceans, but more for something where they have a program to reduce that conflict.
Yeah, I mean it's a hot topic. It's a topic that isn't going to go away, and in a changing ocean, it's probably something we're just going to see more of. So the Shark Spotters program that is shown in this episode was a pre-existing program that was in Cape Town when there used to be a lot more white sharks in Cape Town, but then with the distribution of white sharks shifting around on the southern African coast, there's been more white sharks up on the Garden Route in Plettenberg Bay where we were working, and that has led to some pretty awful human shark conflicts. But it's a conflict that the town is learning to work with and find solutions for, which is a really important thing to be looking at.
And normally for documentaries involving great white sharks in South Africa, they usually go to the cage shark dives and chum the waters, which there's been a bit of controversy in that, in terms of, is that going to lead to more conflict and make great white sharks less wary of humans? So it doesn't do that, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much the nature of the kind of shows that Bertie does. I mean, Bertie is a cinematographer himself, first and foremost, and as wildlife cinematographers, we're always out wanting to document natural wildlife spectacles. So this was a shoot that was aiming to go out and film natural behavior. I've filmed other white shark behavior in Plettenberg Bay before, so we're hoping to film the same kind of behavior, the same kind of interactions. So that's very much the Bertie vibe, is those natural interactions. And we approach these shoots with the same kind of approach that you would have for a wildlife shoot. You know, we go in for quite a long period of time, and you let the animals write the script, really. We're never forcing encounters with the animals, trying to pick the right moments to get in the water with the animals when the conditions are right and the animals seem in the right mood. So really just letting the animals write the script.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really nice documentary, and it's much more like a British David Attenborough style documentary as opposed to the sort of somewhat fantastic Shark Week hyped up
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think
shows.
that's what we were going for. So that's really great to hear.
Yeah, I noticed down here Shark Week coming up has got some titles like Great White Assassins, Great White Sex Battle, Florida Death Beach. It's all this sort of crazy hype, and doesn't really help the shark's image.
Yeah, I mean, it can be tricky to make shark shows. So it does sometimes feel like those shows people kind of took the word shark and just kind of jumbled a bunch of words up and kind of saw how the tiles of words fell, and they were like, oh, that kind of sounds like a show. Let's go with that. But yeah, our show is very much a traditional blue chip style
Mm.
documentary. Yeah.
And before I just go to Candace to talk about the other documentary, how did you get into filming sharks? What's your background? It sounds amazing to have a paid for trip to go to South Africa and swim around with sharks, really.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have been diving for many years. So I learned to dive when I was 12, and it was some of those documentaries we were just talking about, like, like the original Blue Planet series
Mm.
that were very much what I wanted to work on from leaving school. So it's taken a long time. It's probably taken me 15 years or so to get into the position to be working on those kind of shows. And yeah, I mean, even though it does look like a holiday on that show a lot of the time, and we're off diving with sharks. It was hard at times, I promise you. Yeah, and that is one of the nice things about that show is that it does show some of the frustrations. I mean, I think Bertie's he's always happy anyway. So even when he was not very happy that we weren't finding sharks, he still looks really happy because he's just that kind of character, you know. But yeah, that shoot was hard at times. There was a lot of waiting, and just waiting is fine because you're just that's really easy to do. But when you're waiting on a wildlife shoot, you have to be kind of like a coiled spring, which I'm not much of a coiled spring, but you have to be, the conditions could change in 2 minutes time. Suddenly the visibility clears up that and the clouds part and all these kind of things happen and they test you, and that would be the day where you didn't put the battery in because you thought that the whole thing was over. So
Well,
yeah,
you're
as
both
much
Brits, so I guess you're used to, oh God, it's raining again.
yeah
It's a
yeah,
storm.
let's just drink another cup of tea, that'll make it all better.
Fabulous, fabulous. I really did enjoy this one. And we also have Candace Fields as well. And this is a documentary dropped on the same day during SharkFest, Investigations Shark Attacks. So can you tell us about this documentary, please?
Yeah, so this is a 6 episode series that looks at the unfortunate side of negative shark human interactions where somebody has been bitten by a shark, and each episode is in a different location, so the focus is on different species throughout the series, and the goal is sort of to look at these interactions from the perspective of the shark, right? So not like let's have this dramatized interaction, reenactment of the situation, but to take each incident in its own sort of lens and look at it and say,
Mm,
why would this have occurred if I was the shark, right? So using, what we know about shark biology and ecology and what we know about the habitat and all of these things, and to use that as the information as to why this might have happened, right? Looking at what are you swimming in an area that is high in prey density? Are you
mm.
in an area that is murky? Are you in an area that is a known sort of transit site of X species or things like that? So it's kind of a different type of show, I think, than what's been done typically. And so that's exciting. And I think we really work hard to not minimize how sort of harrowing these situations can be for the individuals who have either been bitten or their families and things like that, but to emphasize as well that these instances are so rare, and it's
Yeah,
not a reason to all of a sudden sort of vilify sharks and never go to the water again.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of statistics about shark attacks. So I'm sure that occur in the series that things like vending machines and ladders are more dangerous than sharks. And what, talking about Brits, more British hill walkers are killed by cows every year than are killed by sharks. So you have to look at those sorts of statistics for sure.
For sure, for sure.
And I also like the adage that shark scientists have used that sharks are like babies. If they find something curious, they stick it in their mouths, which, yeah, so many shark attacks, so to speak, attacks are actually just sharks going, what's this? It just happens their mouth are full of big, spiky, pointy teeth.
Yeah, I mean the way that they sort of navigate their world is through touch of with their mouth, right?
Yes.
So obviously people are not designed to withstand that sort of situation. So even sort of a light
A light nuzzle.
a little light, it can be devastating, especially depending on the location that it happens, right? And you see these situations where there are some small sharks causing sort of catastrophic
Mm,
situations, and it's because it just has to be in that exact right place that is, sort of detrimental to survival. But yeah, it's very rare that a shark is coming at a person with the intention of, I'm going to eat you. And we really try to hammer that home is that 99.9% of the time, if you're going to have this interaction, it's because either the shark was on defense or the shark was trying to, just figure out what was going on. And extremely rarely do you see sharks sort of coming back to keep going at a person, right? It's typically one
yeah.
bite and they're gone, but obviously that bite is enough to create a big problem.
Yeah, the rogue sharks of Jaws just don't really exist in real life, particularly Jaws 4, where they track him, this poor guy down to the Bahamas and chase his airplane. One of the worst movies ever. Although apparently it got Michael Caine a new house for his mother or something.
There
So,
you go. So worth
so what do you think about that? There's a lot of YouTubers out there sort of taking video footage of swimming with sharks and sort of grabbing hold of them and or trying to feed them. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is I think, a more complex topic than people think. Firstly, I think, there are these situations where you see these people who have no sort of shark knowledge or even ocean knowledge in terms of how to properly interact with these animals. And that can result in a negative interaction that we don't hear that context of that first part, right? We don't hear that someone was sort of goofing around and trying to do
Hmm.
something for a like, and then the shark had enough of it, right? We just hear shark equals bad guy because it bit this pretty woman. So for that, I think, we really need to take everything that we read about in the media with a bit of a grain of salt in terms of what actually went down. I think we should not be promoting just reaching out and touching wildlife
Mm.
of any type, right? You're privileged and lucky enough to be in their environment, and you should just let them be and just observe it, right? We shouldn't be sort of advertising, oh, I'm gonna get you next to this whale so you can have a nice picture touching it. That's not what these wildlife interactions are supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to kind of just get a sense of their majesty and get a sense of, wow, this animal is so spectacular, and I would have never known that if I didn't just watch them sort of live in their own, go about their merry way. Feeding is again a multifaceted question because there are operations that have controlled feeding dives,
Hmm.
and they can be done safely with reputable operators. And I think that's really the key is that you need to make sure that you're dealing with a reputable operator because,
Yeah,
and just because you see somebody doing it doesn't mean you can go and do it. These
absolutely.
people practice and train and do all sorts of stuff to be able to do it safely, both for them and for the animal. Because, we think about safety often only from our perspective, but in any of these situations, scientists, videographers, you are thinking about the safety of the animal as well. And so going out and doing something just because you saw a video of somebody else doing it doesn't mean that it's going to be a smooth situation for either you or for the animal, and that can create an increased likelihood of a negative interaction happening, and then sort of finishing the cycle of vilifying sharks, right? So I think that we really have to be cognizant of knowing where our expertise lies and leaving certain things to the people who are professionals.
Absolutely. That's a good message to finish on for any wildlife watching, really. Find a reputable operator. Don't hug the wildlife. And I guess treat wildlife like you would with a famous celebrity. You don't just run up and grab Nicolas Cage and thrust the camera in his face and not expect to be punched. You do that with sharks, and they have big, pointy, sharp teeth. So treat them like celebrities and treat them with respect. Absolutely.
With respect, exactly.
Well, thank you very much, Dan and Candace, for letting me chat with you. And these shows are going to be on the 5th of July on Nat Geo's SHARKFEST. So please do look them up. Thank you very much, you guys. And thank you very much, listeners, for tuning in.
Hey, Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew. Don't forget to hit subscribe and follow us for future episodes. And also, refer us. We'd love it. We would also like to hear from you, so please contact us on social media, or you can email us about a topic that you're interested in hearing about. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, or you would like us to come visit your science facility and do a live episode, email us at info@absolutelysmashingllc.com. This podcast was edited and produced by Absolutely Smashing. The music is produced by Jolly Shore Leave. Thank you again for listening, and we couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for being part of the Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew.